2007 was a great year in terms of new things that the world got. Video gamers got Assassin's Creed, BioShock, Mass Effect, and Crysis. Moviegoers got Michael Bay's Transformers with Linkin Park's famous credits song. And car enthusiasts got one of the most well-known supercars ever made, the Nissan GT-R. And today, we are finally going to take a look at this legend, which had surprisingly evaded my list of reviews for all these years, namely JADA's 124 R35 Nissan GT-R. Of course, the Nissan GT-R isn't just this car. It refers to a series of cars that have been made since 1969, although older generations up until and including the R34 have the Skyline prefix attached to them, compared to the most famous of the GT-Rs, namely this, the R35, which is bigger, bulkier, and looks nothing like its predecessors, save for the taillights. Although the nickname Godzilla isn't unique to the R35, but had already been applied to the smaller R34. Now, even though it looks like one, the R35 isn't a coupe, but a 2+2 four-seater. But can you imagine anyone fitting in those cramped back seats and then having to look out of that tiny window? I'd rather be in the trunk of a Cadillac Fleetwood than in the back seat of an R35 GT-R. And we've got Bose speakers at the back. The R35 is mainly known for one reason, and that is that for a relatively affordable price, you could get a drag race champion with a 0 to 60 miles per hour startup time of 3.2 seconds, paired with a launch control that would leave most competitors at the time in the dust. At least up until the quarter mile. And even in terms of track performance, the 2007 GT-R beat the Porsche 997 Turbo's time at the Nordschleife by more than a second. Cars with this type of performance usually costed several $100,000, but the GT-R only cost as much as a BMW M3, while being way faster than the E92. The R35 GT-R has kept receiving both performance boosts and facelifts over the next 15 years that it has been made. And to keep things simple, these can be divided into three eras. The initial release is referred to as the CBA R35, which lasted from 2007 until 2010, followed up by the DBA R35, lasting until 2016, and since then we've had the EBA R35 until now, along with high-performance variants like the Nismo. This particular model is a CBA R35 because of the lack of daytime running lights at the front corners. So it has a 473 horsepower twin-turbo V6 engine. Now, the R35 GT-R is obviously so iconic that it's also been made by Burago. But there's three things the 124 JADA does better than the 124 Burago. For starters, everything opens on this car, meaning the trunk opens as well, and not just the doors and hood. The taillights also look better here than on the 124 Burago, as I will show you later. And finally, the rims also look more like the real cars. However, those are pretty much the only areas where the JADA is better. Because in other aspects, the 124 Burago is better. Starting with the most glaring issue of this 124 JADA here, being the fact that it actually isn't 124 scale, but is a bit oversized and more like 122 scale. This is a common issue with 124 JADAs though, so it'll look fine with other 124 JADAs, for example the Porsche Carrera GT or the Dodge Viper SRT10 I have reviewed here on my channel. But at the end of the day, this JADA Nissan GT-R is 122 scale. So if scale accuracy is important to you, and you want one in silver, and you don't mind having a trunk that doesn't open, and taillights that are just colored in, rather than separate pieces, I would recommend getting the 124 Burago over this one. But the problem is, the silver one is ridiculously hard to find compared to the red one, or even the eggshell color one. The 118 Burago Nissan GT-R in silver is way easier to find. But that one suffers from a different problem, namely the fact that it is a tiny bit underscaled and more like 119, and the wheels on many of them suffer from a negative camber syndrome that old Buragos made before 2010 often had. The Burago 118 also doesn't have brake calipers, while this 124 JADA Nissan GT-R does. Also, the color of the wheels is a brighter and flatter color and doesn't have the same metallic shine as the car body. But other than that, the 118 Burago is definitely worth getting because it's got a surprising amount of detail, especially because the headlights look infinitely better than these chromy ones on the JADA. And the front grille is in fact perforated and also has a carbon fiber texture. And just overall, it actually looks more like the real Nissan GT-R than this JADA here. You can also try getting the 118 JADA version, but just like this 124, it also suffers from being overscaled and more like 116. Then there's the Norev, which costs $100 on average, usually a bit more, so that's not a perfect alternative either. And the Solidos are track versions. So yeah, kinda hard to find a scale-accurate, road-going, budget GT-R other than the 124 Burago, which, however, you won't be able to find in this silver. And I really like the silver of this JADA. It's got this beautiful metallic sheen that they've only managed to also do in some of their other models, but no other manufacturer like Burago or Welly has been able to use the same type of sort of brushed aluminum type of silver. So it looks really cool. But now let's take a closer look at the model. So taking a look at the front of the 124 JADA Nissan GT-R, you can see that the headlights are completely chrome and they actually don't look that good compared to some other models which prefer giving the Nissan GT-R dark headlight housings, which then accentuate the silver bulbs a lot better than a completely chrome housing. Now, I don't know if this was an option on the real car, that you could have like completely chrome housings or black housings, but I just think that the black one looks better than this. On the Pro side, we don't really have any pegs in the middle. Looking closer at the front grille, you can see that we have the GT-R logo in the middle, and there are separate textures here for the various vents, and the bumper in between also has a little square panel for the tow hook. And moving on, we have these two iconic hood vents for the air intakes. And we've got some detail for the windshield wipers. That's about it. And now let's take a look at the engine of this 124 scale JADA Nissan GT-R. And you can see that the engine has pretty much the same detail level as on the 118 JADA Nissan GT-R, and is also painted more realistically compared to some of the later 124 GT-Rs JADA released in different colors, based on movies and TV series, where they'd put an all-chrome version of this engine instead of the properly colored one. There's a decent amount of depth. You can see the 6 valves for the V6 and the air boxes. It just looks really nice, I think. Moving on to the side of the Nissan GT-R, I think that JADA has managed to capture the curves of the R35 pretty well. From a sort of round roof over the curve of the rear to the shape of the door and the windows and the overall stance, like including the suspension. I think everything is just perfect here. The side view mirrors are made out of rubber so that they don't break, and the quality of the reflectors is also quite good. Unfortunately, you can't turn the front wheels, but then again, you can't do that on any JADA model. Behind the front fender, we have GT-R written again, and underneath it is another vent. And of course, we have the orange indicators at the front, and also behind the rear wheel at the back, where the much more expensive 118 NOREV version actually has a separate piece, but with like two pretty obnoxious pegs, which here are missing, thankfully, but of course it's just painted. And now taking a closer look at the wheels, you can see that these rims look really good. I mean, we have like the depth to them, and they've got like 5 lug nuts, and the brake disc is also quite detailed and perforated. Unfortunately, it doesn't spin along with the wheel, but we do get nice bronze brake calipers, which we do not get on the 118 Burago. So that's always nice to see. And then here's a look at the rear wheel. And again, you can see that sort of depth of the rims, which I think looks really good, giving the car a nice overall profile. And taking a look at the back of the 124 JADA Nissan GT-R, you can see that the back also looks very nice, and I am especially amazed by the level of quality for these 4 taillights. Look how much detail they have. This is what I was talking about earlier compared to the Burago 124, which are just painted on. Here JADA has given us 4 separate pieces, and there is no peg in the middle. They also have that ring of LEDs inside. And in the middle of the trunk lid, we have the Nissan logo. And there is a third brake light integrated into the rear spoiler. Underneath the trunk lid on the right, you can see it says GT-R, and then we have a Fast and Furious license plate. And then further below, we have the quad exhausts, where I colored in the center parts to make them look more realistic. So despite this being a 124 scale model, I can open the rear trunk, which is pretty awesome. And inside there's not much to see. It's just like we can see that the interior is completely dark, and under the flash you can see it's kind of small. But yeah, still nice that they included it. And finally we have the fixed wing spoiler, which is just the right size and looks integral to the car body, than like something that doesn't belong there. And now let's take a look at the interior. And the doors open buttery smooth on JADA models. They're not spring-loaded hinges like on Maestos. And perhaps the door card first. You can see that we have very basic level of detail. And it's just a little bit of dust here. That's because this material is not like smooth plastic, but like slightly soft texture. And the door handles could have been painted in silver, but JADA didn't. Just like everything else in the interior, as a matter of fact. There's absolutely nothing that's painted. However, if you take a closer look, you can actually see that there is a lot of detail here for a 124 scale car. That display, I believe, is the same as on the R34. And then underneath we have a lot of buttons and the automatic transmission, the handbrake. The vents on the dash also have 3-dimensional detail, a little bit of depth, although they lack the silver trim. Get a rear view mirror. And taking a look at the seats, they are, I think, the Recaro seats, so they look pretty good. They even have a different texture for the seat backs. If I can focus this, yeah. So, pretty good amount of detail. I just wish that it was painted. And taking a look at the driver's side of the Nissan GT-R, you can see that we have the iconic GT-R steering wheel, and the silver surround is the only part of this interior that is painted. And we do get the instrument panel behind there with a sticker inside, which, if I can focus this and zoom it in a little bit, you can see that there is a sticker there. It's kind of hard to read though. Now you can read it a bit better. And we also get floor pedals that are painted in silver. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty accurate interior to the real Nissan GT-R, the R35. And that's about it. One other thing I forgot to show you is that the dashboard has some nice details here at the front as well. And now if we take a look at the underside of the car, you can see that the chassis is pretty simple. We've got the number and then the Fast and Furious branding, of course. And the exhaust system is not a separate piece like on the 1/18 scale, but it's there and it says JADA, made in China. That's pretty much it. So I hope you guys liked my review of the 1/24 scale R35 Nissan GT-R by JADA. I think that it's an iconic car in an iconic color, so I'm happy to have it in my collection. And it's got a surprising amount of details for the 1/24 scale. The only things that I don't like about it, of course, are the fact that the headlights could have been done better, and it is a bit off scale, and there is like a panel gap for the rear trunk. The interior could have used a bit more detail, but aside from all those things, it's a great model to have. So thanks again for watching. Check out some of my other reviews, and take care. This is Imperial Diecast, signing out.